Quite often, one of the things you're going to want to do is perhaps have two people presenting at the same time, and that presents a few unique challenges in the recording studio spaces. So we're going to show you a little bit about what that is. So you can see here I have Robert as well, who's going to be doing a bit of co-presentation with me. So the main challenges about setting this up is that it can look a little bit wrong unless you think about how the composition of the frame is working, and also about how the two people are presenting together in this environment. What the other person who's not talking is going to do, because they might look pretty bored just sitting there listening to one person talk all the time. So you have to do a few things to try and resolve that. And the other thing to try and fix is the composition. So let's have a look at the composition first. You're going to position yourselves in a way that feels comfortable, as if you were having a conversation with that person. So right now, Robert, you and I are here, and we actually would be about the normal distance that we would be if we're having a conversation together, aren't we?
Yes, that's right.
It actually does feel a little weird. We're still a bit closer than we would normally sit if we were at a table or in a meeting environment or anything like that. We're a bit closer.
Yeah, it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but you know.
Yeah, this is actually way too much distance between each other for a video. So the first thing is that you actually have to sit way closer together than you think when you're on video, and that will be what looks better for the audience. At this distance here, it's natural for us, but it's completely weird for the viewers. So the first thing to try and fix is the distance between each other. So this is actually a little better for the distance when you're watching this as an audience. It doesn't actually seem like we are that close together, but we're actually quite a bit closer than it would normally feel. I mean, we're just about touching knees here. But that feels better for an audience to look at. The next part about composition to fix is the framing of us within the visible area of the screen. There's way too much height above us at the moment. We're kind of aligned in the middle, and that just looks a little weird. Then you might try and change how the camera is set up to try and fix that, but that doesn't necessarily work. So here I've tried to fix the composition by rearranging the positioning of the camera, but it actually doesn't look any better. We've got a few problems going on here. One of which is you can see too much of us, and now the fact that we are really close is emphasized again because you can see the rest of our bodies down here, and that just doesn't work. And the other thing is that the floor is just about creeping in here as well because the camera is pointed down way too low, which emphasizes the other problem, and that is that the camera is too high for really sitting down in this space. So it constantly is looking down on you rather than being at eye level, and no amount of rearranging it is going to fix that when you're sitting down. So the next thing we have to fix is that we really ought to stand up. So now we're standing up and things are starting to look a little better. The eye line with the camera is much better for the both of us. We're still standing as close as we had to stand when we were sitting down, but it's not as emphasized because you can't see the rest of our body outside of the shot. We are now able and feel a little easier about using our hands to do things, and the composition of the frame, of how much of us is in the frame, is much better. The next thing is about presentation. You're going to have somebody talking a lot of the time and flipping between, and what does the person who's not talking do the rest of the time? Particular things about engaging with the camera are important. It can be really hard to know what that person who's not speaking should do. They might feel like they're a bit deer in headlights if they stand and just look at the camera, but it doesn't work either just to look at the person who's doing the talking all of the time. You have to mix it up by doing a little bit of both. Sometimes that person who's listening is going to need to look at me and do a bit of nodding to acknowledge that they're hearing what is being said, but they're also going to occasionally have to look at the audience like they're engaging with them. It always helps to remember to do a bit of smiling, but it's about jumping between doing a bit of both. Sometimes you'd be looking at me, sometimes you'd be looking at the camera. The main thing about having two people presenting on screen is that it should be less about presenting something formally and more about a conversation, shouldn't it?
Yes, exactly. It should be more about, almost about if we could debate an issue to some degree, well, that's going to make the viewer feel a lot more engaged of actually what we're talking about. So it's, it almost feels like the less, if less scripted you have, the better it's going to be, the more natural it's going to be.
So it's about changing the piece of content that it is by having two people on screen and the nature of that.
Yeah.
And there's a few things you still have to think about by being on video. You can't really talk over
you can't talk all that.
Because otherwise it makes it hard for the audience to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it does free up all of those things that can make it a little bit stilted. If you treat it more as a conversation, change the nature of what that content is.
That's right. I mean, it's almost about that. The more relaxed you are and the more engaged you're getting with each other, well, exactly the more engaged the viewer's going to be looking at us, So it's the same thing. The more... what's the word I'm looking for, Andrew?
I don't know. I think I lost it. And if it's still something that feels a little bit uncomfortable, you can use some of the props that are in the room to use. The lectern gives you a sort of point of focus for the two presenters.
It's also that element of when you stand that close, it feels uncomfortable. What are you going to do with your hands? You can put them in a pocket. So you feel a little bit uncomfortable with a lectern. You can sort of, you can start leaning on it and it just gives you a little bit more support and makes you sort of a bit more relaxed. If you got some notes, you can always flick to those and you can actually engage with notes, which is quite nice. The main thing is, of course, is that you engage the audience, whatever you say.
So just take a few of these things into consideration if you want to have two people in the green screen recording studio. It takes a little bit of a different setup to get it working nicely.
Yeah, that's good.